This is What If I Told You, the event psychology video podcast for event professionals in which Victoria Mady, event consultant and host, talks with the world's top minds in behavioral science, neuroscience, and psychology on how to transform events using insights about human behavior and mind. For more science-based tips, join Event Psychology Club at eventpsychology.gumroad.com. Also, check out Victoria's online course, Event Psychology Lab, at eventpsychology.thinkific.com, which covers key behavioral science concepts and offers research-backed solutions to your event challenges. This course is a unique opportunity to upgrade your industry skills and gain a competitive edge without adding to your already busy schedule. Now, enjoy the conversation.
Hello, I'm Victoria Mady, and this is What If I Told You, the event psychology podcast, where I talk all things brain science, insights, and how to apply those in events. And today I'm meeting with Louise Ward, the head of community at 42 courses and the host of Behavioral Science Club that meets every Saturday in Zoom. Louise has background in market research, and she is known for her love of books and all things behavioral science. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you very much, Victoria. It's an honor to be invited along to your lovely podcast, and I'm really looking forward to having a chat.
Thank you so much for joining me. Well, Louise, we met, I think, in 2020. When you started the Behavioral Science Club, right? And I know that you didn't have this the formal educational training in behavioral science, but you entered that field through continuously learning about behavioral science, right? And I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating that these days we can learn about some specific field that we feel passionate about, and we can start contributing to it through our efforts and through our own knowledge. So I think you are the example of how being passionate about specific topic or specific field can lead to amazing results. So I'm really curious to hear about your journey into behavioral science.
Thanks so much, Victoria. And yes, I do get passionate about things. You're absolutely right. And the journey was one that came about as a result, I suppose, of lockdown, because everything went online. And I signed in to the Nudgestock Behavioural Science Festival. I didn't know what behavioural science was. I didn't know what Nudgestock was, but I knew what Ogilvy was as an advertising agency. Mm-hmm. And my dad had been in advertising. I'd always been really interested in advertising, but gone into market research myself. And I saw the name Ogilvy and I thought, that sounds really interesting, and just signed in to see what was going on. And I was just blown away, Victoria. It's just, there was so much new. There were all these new people. I didn't know who they were. And everything they were saying was so interesting. And it resonated with my professional interest in market research. I could see it was there was bits of that there. And my interest in advertising, that was there. But it was something different that had come together in the middle. And I just really wanted to find out what it was all about. And of course, the best thing about that event, and to me, the best thing about all online events, is that you have the opportunity to chat to everybody else who's there. And that's really, to me, what made that event, chatting live, like you do when you're chatting at a Facebook or a YouTube event, any of those. And that really sparked off the chat between all of us. It was great crack. You wouldn't believe it. People who didn't know each other and had just signed in, but still straight away, the rapport started up. And I'd put a link in there from LinkedIn where I had a list of the books of the speakers, which I just created for myself because, I love reading, Victoria. And my first reaction when I'm learning about something new is, who is that person and what have they written and can I read about it and how can I learn about it? And there was just great interest in what basically was just a list of books. I'm great at making lists actually. Drives my husband absolutely mad. Is that another list? He says, but I'm great at making lists. And I suppose that was the start, because Prakash, my co-host, Prakash Sharma in India, my co-host in Behavioural Science Club, saw my chat and got chatting, and a couple of people said that would be a great idea for a book club. And Prakash acted on that straight away. The next day, he started a group in LinkedIn, which was Behavioural Science Club, and told me about it in LinkedIn. He said he tracked me down and said, oh, I've started this group. So we were all sort of like the early adopters, as it were. And I was mad keen to try and track down other people who'd been there. So I was sort of searching for Nudge Stock in LinkedIn as a search tool to see if other people were posting about it and saying to them, oh, actually, we've started a group and you might like to come and join us. So I was a bit of doing some sort of detective work in LinkedIn. And that's how it all came about, really, just through that. And through the kindness, I think, Victoria, of people agreeing to come and join us on this sort of fledgling idea and come along as speakers. And I think, as you know, Victoria, you know, you're in the events field, and sometimes people you don't expect to accept your invitation will accept. Absolutely. And you have to just ask. You have to just ask. And when people say to you, God, how did you get Cass Sunstein to come and speak at your group? I said, well, I sent him an email and I invited him. And you'll be surprised, things that people, obviously these are to us quite exalted people. You know, we do look up to them as being extremely knowledgeable about their subject, but it doesn't mean they're inaccessible. They're only normal people like us, really, just much more intelligent.
Right. It's interesting. So is it like 2 years anniversary this year for the Behavioral Science Club?
Yeah, that's right. In July, we've been going for 2 years. And
how many members do you have?
Oh, now? Maybe about 6,000 members now. And I think Prakash has been numbering the events. And he said something to me the other day and said something like at Christmas, because we haven't done it absolutely every week to do with sort of like holidays and things like that. Yes. He said maybe, I think, by Christmas or just before Christmas is going to be the 100th episode. He calls them episode of Behavioural Science Club, which is great. It's a great achievement. And also, I think, like, there's been a time recently when we would have got together and had a chat, and I've said, oh, there weren't many people at the event last week. You know, do you think the online thing is losing its glow? You know, people don't want to be signed in. Why would you want to sign in on Saturday? We're all online all day at work, and, you know, why would you? But people do, and the numbers roll, they go down, they come up, depending on who the speaker is. So there still seems to be an interest. So, you know, like you've had to adapt, obviously, Victoria, hugely. You know, the events industry has had to adapt, and in a way, we're still all just learning each time what works and what doesn't work. It's a continual behavioral science experiment.
Right. I was going to ask, so if you look back and you look at the way you started doing online meetups for the Behavioral Science Club, for example, what would you do differently now?
Oh, gosh, what would we do differently now? I don't know if we'd necessarily do anything differently now, but I suppose what's relevant is the fact that it was just two people who were very enthusiastic, doing it as nothing more than really a sort of exalted hobby. Whereas if you were setting up today to start and it was on the back of being from a professional basis, you'd want to know that you were starting out with a little bit more structure, maybe, or even way in which people expect a little bit more of a sort of a format when they sign in, that you've got your corporate logo and things like that. So there's lots of things potentially, had we been coming from that direction, we would have done. But at the end of the day, it's just me and Prakash joining people for a chat. Yeah. And it's still in the standard Zoom format so that people can easily join and easily contribute. But I don't think necessarily we would change our format, but most people doing that type of thing are coming from quite a different direction. So there would be more preparation. But what I would say is, which I think I maybe said to yourself when I first met you, Victoria, and you were talking at the time about doing a podcast. And I said, well, just start and just do it. And I still extremely believe in that. Whatever kind of business you're in, however well known you are, nobody's going to say, oh, God, did you see that? Nobody cares really. And so to just start and just get going, and it won't be until you get going that you learn what works for you, what works for you, your people, what works for your speakers, what works for your audience. So it's a huge amount of trial and error. And then you just find that you sort of fall into what works.
Right. What I'm hearing is that actually that resonates with me a lot. I recently posted about, the need for more experimentation in events. And I believe that behavioral science can provide us with a lot of, inspiration for that, in events, because I believe we don't experiment enough in events, but it's through sort of non-trivial and unconventional solutions that we can come up with something that would kind of meet the expectations. And talking about expectations, by the way, I'm interested to know your opinion about, the audience and how the expectations changed over this time, through the pandemic till now. What do you think?
Yes, well, of course, we all launched into it and didn't know what was going on really. And what was so marvellous was that you could sign in and you could see for free Arianna Huffington sitting in her lounge talking to you just as a normal person. So I think it's been a great leveller amongst society. And, we've watched things on YouTube. Everybody's done their own versions of things. However, a lot of them have been famous people who've done things, I don't know, singing in their kitchen or whatever. And it's to that degree, I think it's been a big human leveller, and we're less into the fake and we're big into authenticity. We don't want somebody sort of prancing around in designer heels. Like, what are you doing that for? We're all just real human beings. And I think authenticity is a big thing. And just sort of going back to what you were talking about, the experimentation in events, absolutely. I mean, it makes everything more exciting. However, of course, you are working as an events professional, and I'm coming along and I'm paying you to do this for me. And as soon as someone says experimentation, like, oh, what? What do you mean? No, I'd rather you just did what works. So I can see that's a huge challenge, but it doesn't stop us throwing little things in. They don't need to be the full, the whole thing doesn't need to be 100% turnabout big experiment. It could just be that, 20 minutes in, you don't even need to tell them it's experimental, 20 minutes in, we're going to be doing this. And you think, I haven't tried it before, but we'll see how it works. And you'll never know if you don't try it. So obviously it's very different when someone is paying you to take charge and to host the event. But if it's just a small thing put in amongst, then that's a super opportunity to test out. Does it work if we try to play this game online, or does it work if we try to split into groups and then come back but do something different rather than just, so you won't know until you try.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And I think you're so right. Of course, when it comes to, paid events and events as a business, there is this challenge of meeting the client's expectations, and you don't want to ruin things by experimenting too much, right? But at the same time, you're so right, throwing those small things and experimenting, in small steps would bring that confidence that, this works and that doesn't. So you can go in small steps, but still do things a little bit different every time. And that's how you can, discover.
And they can be the smallest,
more.
They can be the smallest thing, Victoria. You sign into some things and straight away they'll be saying, great to have everybody joining us. Just pop in the chat box where you're joining us from. And just that small prompt can be a thing. If that's what you want in your event, that small prompt can be a way to get them talking if you want that happening in the chat box. Or, just trying out these different things to see, did that, do people like when you say to them, okay, now we're going to get you to take part and respond? Maybe they don't. People, can be very hesitant. As we say, you can't know till you try each of these events. And I suppose each audience is different, but we're all human and we all know the things that either make us scared or,
right. Yes.
or want to show off maybe.
Right. A provocative question for you. So have you, with all this knowledge, of behavioral science findings, have you ever used those insights while planning your events?
Oh, that's very funny that you say that, Victoria, because we're often talking about the fact that, you can have great learning about these subjects, as it were, and be able to talk about it. But when it comes to it, you're not actually doing it. I think in terms of hosting events for myself, I think that, as I say, I'm trying out different things all of the time. But the other thing is that with behavioral science is that we're doing so much of this stuff without knowing really, and it just happens that when you study it, it's when you put them into it. So when I reach out to people and say to them, I'm working at 42 courses now, and I don't know if you knew, but they have got a free course so that you can have a taster, and and I like for people to know that there's something there for free if you can get it. And if I was to put that little scenario into a text or in a blog post, you'd then go on to say, well, this is the reciprocity. I've reached out, I've said hello, I've given you something, and that has opened you up in terms of your goodwill feelings to me. And it may well be that you in the future can think, so Louise told me about that, I'll tell her about this. But it's not until we go to sort of recount the tale that it then becomes the explanation. And you may not even know you're doing it at the time. It is, at the end of the day, it is human nature, and it's the sort of the natural way to communicate.
I would say, that's something that I see often in events, because a lot of event planners do or apply a lot of behavioral science, in events without knowing that they are doing it. And that's sort of, I think, a challenge. That creates a challenge because they think like, why would I need to know about all those concepts and about all the details? I have already been, doing that forever, like coming from my gut feeling, and that works. So what would you say to that thought, to that opinion?
Well, I suppose the thing with this is that it's not necessarily just the actual event that we're talking about. It's before the event even happens, we've got to sell the event. So we can then bring our knowledge of behavioral science in terms of how to frame the pricing, how to lay out the different, maybe if there's different levels of pricing, we can use our understanding of behavioral science to know things like the way that people go for the middle price, or that if we frame something by a certain suggestion. So it's not only the actual event and saying, okay, great, here we are, what can we do when we get there? There's so much that comes beforehand where we can bring things in and even just be talking to them about, well, let's talk about the marketing of this event and how are you going to put it out? And maybe just by telling them something about the style in which they should set out the pricing, it's sharing your skill and your knowledge of behavioral science. So there's so much more to it than just the event.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. I actually claim that, what happens before the event and after the event is as important, if not much more important than the event itself, because you build that anticipation, you kind of create that experience even before it happens. And so that's how you set the scene for the event itself, right? The same happens after the event, because people go away and they just may not remember what you actually created for them, the experience that, for example, the learning experience that you created for them. If you don't do that right, they just go away and they never remember that, right? So they eventually that comes to how satisfied they are with this learning experience that you created for them, right? And so making sure that something happens post-event that sort of cements that knowledge or makes it more memorable for the audience, right? That's what makes the event stand out and makes it more efficient, and makes people come back, I believe.
Yes, when we first started doing Behavioral Science Club, I'd say for about the first good sort of 3 or 4 months, I was just so grateful anyone was signing in. I thought, this is great, people are joining us. And as the event, obviously, there's much more sophisticated ways to do this, but because Prakash was hosting it, I didn't have the list of people who'd registered. But again, as you know yourself, you can have 100 people, 200, 300 register, but when it comes to it, maybe 40 people sign in. But I was just each week, as the event was going on, I was scribbling furiously in my notebook the names of all the people who were there. And it might be that 2/3 of them were people who were in our LinkedIn group in Behavioral Science Club, but other people had just found the link somewhere and had joined us. And then, so that would be the Saturday. And then on Monday or even Sunday, I'd then start finding these people and sending them a message. Thanks so much for joining us on Saturday. So as you say, it's the little things like that then resonate with the person and reminds them, oh, that was nice. I'll sign in next week. And you've then made that human connection, because of course we're all signing into these things, but we're not necessarily all of us connecting during the event. And if you get to ask a question, that's nice. Or if you're chatting, but we still are signing in, and a lot of people are in a very passive role. And that suits a lot of people. A lot of, we say that I think maybe 90% of people in social media don't ever post or don't just use it to read. That's absolutely fine in that passive role. But for other people, or even somebody who is passive, they just might like to see that, oh, that's quite nice. Somebody said thanks for bothering to sign in. So again, as I say, these things are all experiments. We don't ever know, really. That's half the thing. It's because you're not tracking them as you would do, say, in a traditional market research way. We can't know which of the things that are successful or not when it's just so sort of amateurish and sporadic like this, not like a special campaign, a tract and all things like that. Yeah. But I think at the same time, you, as you say, mentioning before, gut feeling versus behavioral science versus, having it down. We want to know things scientifically. Of course we do. We want to know things scientifically and see when, research projects have been done, the big projects that they do in academia. We want to see the science behind it. But that doesn't mean we can't do our own little things and just be practicing it. It doesn't mean it's out of our reach.
Yeah, it's a combination, I guess, right? That wins. And I'm glad you mentioned, human connection. And I believe, this is the basis for developing a great community. And I feel like you have a natural talent for developing a community. And I wanted to ask you about, from that experience that you had or you're having with Behavioral Science Club and in your new role, what are your takeaways for the event professionals who want to develop a community out of their event?
Yes, developing community. Now, I will say in advance, I have got a long habit of gathering people together. As a new mother, I gathered together, I had a new mothers group, and we all went round from house to house with our little sort of new babies, all learning from each other because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. And when I moved to Ireland, there was no toddler group in the town that I arrived in. So I just started a toddler group and started gathering the flocks in. So I had a toddler group. And I've always been involved in things like when my children were in play school, I was very heavily involved with the committee. So I kind of like these things where you have groups of people that have this, all have this inherent interest. And I think that is the key to the whole thing. We can't just have hundreds of people gathered together with all telling different stories. The inherent thing has got to be that we've all got this interest in common, be it that we don't know how to deal with 3-month-old babies, or is it that we need another mother to talk to whilst our 2-year-old builds blocks. And at the other extreme where we've come to now, which is that the group of people in Behavioral Science Club, however many thousands of people they are, when they come together on the Saturday in their smaller numbers, a sort of 40 or 50, we've all inherently got that interest in common, however wide the field is, because we know the field is covering all different industries and so many different disciplines, anthropology, psychology, sociology, but we've all got that core thing in common. And so you'll see that importance when you're in your events, whatever the subject is that everyone's coming together for. And that's your sign. This is sort of the core thing. That's your, the rock in the middle that's going to really hold everyone tight together and always, I suppose, be drawing back to it.
Mm-hmm. But it seems like, a lot of events are struggling. So the teams want to create that community, but something is missing. It seems like that. Well, so is there any, a secret source or...
I think there's no secrets.
Yeah.
Now, if you go into, let's say another very big learning platform that I'm not going to name, but we can all think of very, very big learning platforms that everyone signs into, and they'll talk about their community. If you look on social, they'll be talking about their community. But when you actually go and sign into it, there's not really anybody there. And I think we all have this little bit of this sort of fear of putting ourselves out there. Even if I set you up a group, people are, oh, should I write that? Or, oh, should I put that in there? Or what will they think of that? And you have to do, as a community leader or a community facilitator, whoever you see yourself as, have to just do your best to help people along the way to come out of themselves. And you'll just find that you're doing that over and over again, saying to people, oh, do feel free to post, and as soon as someone responds, you're going to respond back to them because they're nervous. They're like, oh God, I wonder did that go up okay? Or, and it's a little bit like
a lot of different, all sorts of fears, right? That people maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of fears. What's someone going to think? And the fact is, people talk to me as well about, at the end of the day, LinkedIn itself is a community. And as we were saying before, some people post and some people don't. And you'll talk to people, they're like, oh yeah, I've always thought about writing an article and putting it out there. Or I'd be like, oh God, but I don't know. And like, the truth is, unfortunately, most people won't read it. So it really doesn't matter. And this is what you just have to say to yourself is we are so much more conscious of what we're doing than everybody else. And most people haven't seen it. That's the sad truth. Most people won't see it. And I say, well, so what? I might go into LinkedIn after this and pop a little post in with a screen grab and say, oh, I had a great chat with Victoria. And then I see maybe a week later, I don't know, only a few people have read it. Just take it down. It just doesn't matter. Take it down, or just accept that only a few people read it. It's made no difference to us. Just people just have to go for it. It's not necessarily confidence. It's just seeing that most people don't care. And again, that's the tail end of it. When I say, when you're a community supporter, whatever you call yourself, if somebody does go out there, make sure you get onto it and either respond to them if it's in a post or in whatever way they have put themselves out there. Just give them the confirmation that they've done the right thing and it was worthwhile them doing it. And who knows, they might then do it again. And then they might tell somebody else, oh, there's this great group here. It's really fun and there's nice people and they put things up and they do these events, So it's like an agony aunt, really, isn't it, Victoria?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That brings up my next question about the online networking versus in-person networking. And I'm curious to hear from you. What do you think about, networking online? Does it work or it doesn't work? Why? What can we do to make it work better in terms of, networking at events, for example?
Yeah, I think we had a little chat about an event that I went to, Victoria, very sort of early in when things were opening up, and I came back and said how absolutely awful it had been and how much it made me realised how I liked online events. And of course, we'd had 18 months or so of only being able to meet with people either by setting up a Zoom call or by chatting with them in chat boxes or by messaging them in various formats. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, great, I can go along in the evening to this room by the pub and everyone's going to be there. And I went along, and as you saw when I commented, I was like, nobody was introducing you to anybody else, which is the great thing about when you signed in. That's it. My name's there. I'm like, oh, there's Louise. I don't have to actually do anything. And it was dark. I couldn't see anybody. And it was just very badly organized. Now, it was a particularly badly organized event, but it made me realize how important all of the things are in an in-person event to put your attendees at ease. When they arrive, I mean, we all think it's completely idiotic marching around with the silly little either sticker or the name badge and where we're from, but it's brilliant. You look over the table at somebody and say, oh, hi, you're with whatever. What do you do there? You don't need to be introduced. It's all just there. So these little things, when they're taken away from you, you start to realize how important they are. And I've been to great events like that, where you've got your flipping silly name badge, and they've got people nominated to move around the room. And when they see someone arrive like myself on my own, if I'm not the type of person who's happy to just stride up to a complete stranger, that they'll come over to you and start to engage you. I think it's so, so important. Those network facilitators in an in-person event when it's a big event like that, because again, I'm a confident person. I know why I'm going to this particular event, but walking through the door can be absolutely terrifying. into this room, massive faces. You're going flick, 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 flick with your eyes, trying desperately to see if there's somebody you know that you can go to. And if you don't see somebody, it's like, oh, just sidle casually up to the table, or go to the bar to get my drink, or start looking at whatever we want a little bit of help, please, to just move us along. And then all somebody needs to do then is say, oh, do you know such and such? Oh, you don't. Oh, can I leave you two to maybe introduce yourselves to each other whilst I just go? And, there's such small things. I think that's just absolutely essential. And particularly now when things have been going on for a good while now, but I think we're still a bit rubbish at it. We've forgotten how to do it properly.
No, I agree. Do you think that online networking is worse or better or similar?
I suppose it depends what your final outcome requirement is. There's absolutely nothing like meeting in person. But the thing about the meeting in person events, and we'll all know we've done this, is you often stay with the same person all the time. You think you're going to be networking. You're like, oh, great, I'm going to a networking event. I've been invited to a networking event. And when you're on the train on the way home, you think, God, I only spoke to 2 people. And it needs to be managed. I need to be told. I need someone to come up to me and say, oh, right, like, speed dating. It needs to be, I think those events need to be, properly managed. You could go to something like that. Now, you could say, oh, that makes you a rubbish networker. Maybe, but you could go to an event like that and not talk to anybody. It's a big thing for some people to make that first stride. And, I think we need much more hands-on work going on, the silent work of the people moving about and helping us along. And you'll leave the event and say, God, that was great. I met 10 new people, and I've never spoken to, so I think there's still a lot we can do.
Right. Not leaving it to chance, right? Because there is so much going on in the brains of those people who may want to get as much as possible from networking, but they may not know how. And on top of that, we've got all those fears and uncertainty and different personality traits, right? And eventually people are not as satisfied with how their networking is being done at events as we hope they would be, right? And so,
and of course, when we're there in person, we can see in our estimation, oh, that person's that's an important person. I don't know if I should go and talk to them, because they might just think I'm not important. Whereas when we're online, when we're connecting in LinkedIn, when we're networking in that way, it doesn't matter, does it? What somebody calls themselves, I see myself, oh, that person works in whatever field it is that I'm interested in, making a connection like, oh, great. Well, that person, he, she is the head of such that would be a good person to connect with. And you reach out and say, can I connect with you? I'm working in this area. I think I'd really liked what you were posting. I really like that last post. And we don't have that thing. Oh God, she might think I'm a bit, it's not, you've got A, the anonymity, but B, the more opportunity to approach people that in IRL, in real life, in an event like that, you think, I probably shouldn't go and bother the CEO. He's got better things to do than talk to me. I shouldn't go and bother her. She's the main speaker tonight, and I'm sure she's got loads to do.
Right.
Whereas in an online event, you're there, you're with them, you're chatting with them, you're in the chat box, or you're putting your question to them. So, there's pros and cons with every event.
Yeah, No, that's a great point, actually. And I agree, there are pros and cons to both modes, in person and virtual. So obviously, anyone organizing the event should come from the initial goals of organizing that event, right? And
what do you advise people at the moment, Victoria, in terms of with hybrid events? Because I'm really interested that a lot of events are still offering the online option, and I, as one, am absolutely delighted because I'm in Dublin, so I can't go to big events in London, but I still want to sign in to, say, something like the Financial Times, business such and such, and to be able to sign into that from a distance is a great opportunity. So I, for one, hope that the in-person events don't stop offering a virtual version, but who knows? What do you think?
No, you said it all, actually. I believe, and from the very beginning, I've been saying that having these opportunity to choose from a number of formats is a blessing, because imagining if pandemic happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't have all those technologies that we now have. And thankfully now we can choose from, going online, going in person, going hybrid. And I believe, hybrid is a great way to provide as many people as possible with the opportunity to be and experience that event. Because, like you said, if I cannot go somewhere because of my family schedule or my work schedule, whatnot, right? I still will be having this opportunity to attend an event and to learn or to network, just achieve my goals, right? So that's a huge improvement to people's lives, and I do hope that we can get more and more efficient with, on the backstage, of that, creating more and more interesting and effective hybrid events. And what I believe, it's not about technology that is a challenge right now, because we've got great technologies already. And yes, we can argue about what works better, what we can do better in terms of technological advancements. But I believe where we need to boost our game is actually behavioral science and applying the knowledge about human behavior and mind to event planning. Because, like I say all the time, experiences happen and take place in people's minds first. It's not about technology, like Rory Sutherland says. It's about the psychology that's going to, make us move forward and innovate. Right. So that's why I believe it's very important for both newcomers or seasoned event professionals to learn more about behavioral science and neuroscience and psychology. Yeah. So, and I've got a couple of final questions for you. So, because you are the person, the only person I know who can read dozens of books like in record time, I usually ask my guests to recommend 3 books for the event professionals to read, but I would like you to tell me about 5 books.
Oh gosh. Well, what I would say first of all is there's not really a prescribed list, because we should read widely. And once you've got this idea of behavioural science in your mind, and you'll know this, Victoria, once it's in your mind, you see it everywhere. And that's what's so great. And you'll be reading a completely different subject, but you'll be underlining something because you'll be thinking, yes, that's relevant to this. It's in so many fields. So that's the first thing, read widely. And my rule is, if I only got one thing out of the book, it was worth reading, because I've got one thing. So we won't judge the book on how much we got out of it. If we got something, that's absolutely fantastic. I suppose the easiest approach would be maybe to talk about the very first books I read, which was after the Nudgestock event in 2020. And I'd signed into the event, as I said. and all these amazing speakers. And then also advertising at the event was 42 courses, which is how I then started learning with 42 courses, and did the very first course, the behavioral economics course, just set me off on my journey and passion, as you say, for the subject. And I mean, I've subsequently done all of their courses, and obviously I work for them now. I didn't then, but for me, it was a fantastic learning experience. But the very first books that I read was, as I said, a result of Nudge Doc, and I read Rory Sutherland's book Alchemy, which is a fantastic read. You don't need to have any interest in behavioral science, because it's just his voice is so present in the book. He's a great storyteller, and it's the type of thing where once you've read the story, you want to, like when you read a good story in the newspaper, you're like, oh God, did you know such and such? So when you read Rory's book, you'll be telling everybody, you know, the Red Bull story, about how everybody thought in the test, thought it tasted absolutely disgusting. And you'll love these loads of little nuggets of great information that he tells you. And at the same time, of course, you know, you're learning so much about the basics of behavioral science. So that's a beautiful way to learn when you don't really realize that you're learning. So that was the very first book I read. And then a very practical book in terms of behavioral science is Bree Williams' Behavioral Economics. Bree Williams does these absolutely fantastic, you know Bree, I think you've had her on the show.
Yes.
Bree does fantastic videos on her YouTube channel. I think hers are the best videos. She's so unique in her style and tells everything with a great fun attitude. And obviously her book is a little bit more serious, but it offers huge amounts of advice, models, layouts of templates, and really, really practical advice for bringing behavioral economics learnings into your business, whatever your business. So that was the book I read in terms of the practicalities. Now, in terms of understanding the psychology behind the subject, a great book, again, which I got from that first event, is Hooked by Patrick Fagan. And Patrick Fagan is a behavioral scientist, and his book is great for bringing in all the details of the psychology, which is obviously his specialized subject, the psychology behind a lot of the things that we do, and brings in all the rules of influence from Cialdini. And so that's a great book for the psychology. Of course, you have to read the classics like Nudge and Thinking Fast and Slow. But then if you want a little bit of an alternative slant on things, again, from this first Nudge Doc, Adam Ferrier's book, which is called, what is it called? Stop Listening to the Customer.
Yes.
Is a little bit of a controversial title, which then as you go on to read, it's not exactly what he's saying, but very much talks about, well, if it was up to the customer, all our cars would be the same color. And, you know, it goes into the whole thing of us not knowing ourselves. And there's some great arguments. Adam Ferrier, again, is psychology trained and has a great sense of humor. So it's a really sort of a diverse set of books that sort of go in to tick all of the boxes. Oh, and obviously in with the classics, Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. So there's the core texts, the Nudge, Thinking Fast and Slow, and the Predictably Irrational. And then these sort of newer books, which bring in all the different slants to the subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about that, Victoria?
Oh, that's brilliant.
Does that tickle? What about B.J. Fogg's Tiny Habits? Now, the thing about that book that's fantastic, do you like that one, Victoria?
Yes.
The thing I like about that is when he tells these stories like when you're going to brush your teeth, this could be when you get down and do 5 press-ups in the bathroom.
Yeah.
They're always, you know, it's a bit of a silly suggestion, but what the concept that you could just adopt a little thing. It might be that, set your alarm to take a drink of water. Or these, maybe it doesn't work, but it puts the whole concept of how we adopt habits.
Right.
You know, whether those habits work for you or not is kind of irrelevant, but it puts the whole concept in your head of how habits work, and also how you could maybe then go ahead to create your own habit techniques, or try out different techniques, or bring the role of habits into business, or, so that's another great book. It was a great lineup, that 2020, for getting a really core introduction to the subject. So that's another thing, is that from that event, all of the videos are in YouTube. And once you start looking for 2020 nudge stock, and of course the newer ones that have come since 21, 22, you then begin to realize, oh, crikey, goes back to 2016. There's hundreds of videos watching people doing their talks. I mean, what a privilege, really, to be able to watch all these amazing caliber of speakers giving their talks, seeing the presentations, and being able to, whatever you do for yourself, whether it's taking notes or thinking, I want to find out about that person, and then looking them up, or buying their book. So the wealth of learning, as you were saying, that we can teach ourselves, it's there for the asking if you're interested to get on and do a bit of research and get passionate.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. My final question, Louise, would be, the podcast title is What If I Told You? And I always ask my guests to complete this sentence with one takeaway from the conversation, or relevant to our conversation. So what if I told you? Oh,
gosh, what if I told you anything is possible?
Absolutely.
Anything is possible. It's very wide, but it's true. All those people we look at with admiration, be they athletes or hugely academic, rewarded people, or authors, or whatever thing it is that we particularly look at and admire, those things are all available for us. Those people had to start somewhere. I'm not now going to become an Olympic gymnast, but if I decided this afternoon, I really need to get a bit more supple, and I could do a few exercises, if I wanted to, I'm sure in a year I could do a jump on a bar beam. Anything is possible, and the only thing that's stopping us is ourselves.
That's a great point. Another brilliant point from you, Louise. Thank you so much for your time and for joining me today. I encourage everyone to connect with Louise on LinkedIn and to join Behavioral Science Club, of course. So I invite you to join the Event Psychology Club, and also, if you're interested, to take the Event Psychology Lab online course that I created for the event profs like you. Until next time, bye-bye.